Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 whistlekick State of the Martial Arts live stream. Hopefully you can all hear me all right. Hopefully you can see me all right. I want to shout out to everybody who's watching, whether you're watching now, perhaps you're watching later. We'll probably create an audio feed of this. Maybe you're listening in the future. Thank you for joining us. This is a really important event for us, and I appreciate you spending some time for this thing that we all really care about, the martial arts. If you don't know me, my name is Jeremy Lesniak. I'm the founder and president of Whistlekick Martial Arts, Whistlekick LLC. And in this live stream, I'm going to be presenting my thoughts on where the martial arts world is and what we might do to move forward. If you see me looking to the left, I have some notes over here. I'm pretty good at riffing, but I'm not good enough to do this entire live stream off the top of my head. I'd rather get it right and have to look off camera than improvise and get to the end and say, oh, look at all these things that I forgot. So I appreciate your understanding and your patience as I may pause and look off screen for this, because it is, again, to me at least, very important. We're currently live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and if all went well, Rumble. This is our first time using Rumble. If you're unfamiliar with whistlekick and what we do, we're a company that celebrates martial arts, all traditional martial arts, and all martial artists. We produce content and products and events, and that is the last commercial element of this live stream. We're not going to talk about our company. We're not going to talk about the things that we offer. We're going to talk about the things that are common to all of us as martial artists. We're going to talk about the things that we do well. We're going to talk about the things that we don't do well. And my hope at the end of tonight's live stream is that you will be inspired. That something I will say will inspire you to create some change. Maybe in what you do, maybe in what you teach, maybe in what you train. Doesn't matter to me. Because that change, as we'll talk about later, is required for growth. You can't do exactly what you've always done and get better. It doesn't work that way. So thank you for indulging me and joining me today. Let's start with some reflections on 2022. How last year went. Last year was, for a lot of us, a big year because it was the first year where we started to kind of get back to normal after the couple of years prior. I'm going to intentionally avoid using some certain words, but I was really pleased at a lot of the things that I saw, but less pleased at some of the others. See, if we roll back, not just 2022, but the few years beforehand, 2021, and I guess most specifically 2020, the thing that stands out for me the most is that martial arts schools fell into one of two groups. Martial arts schools who insisted on doing everything as they had always done, remaining true to their roots, teaching what they taught, how they'd always taught it. And then I saw other schools that faced the challenges of the times, and they adapted. They taught over Zoom or Skype, over live Facebook chats, and I think we all know which group fared better. The first group, sadly, I know quite a few schools that closed. And the latter group, I know quite a few schools who, yeah, they lost some students, but they survived. And they're in a period now where they are growing faster than they ever have because they were willing to embrace where they were. As martial artists, we train to have all of these tools available to us, to use them as we need to use them when it is appropriate. Insisting that someone attacks you incorrectly, there's a throwback joke for you, for some of you, that doesn't work in the real world. If you want to reach people, you have to meet them where they're at. If they can't come to your physical location, you have to find another way. The modern era, whether it's now or 100 years from now or 500 years ago, wherever we are now requires adaptation. We have to meet the times where they are. We have to make the best decisions we can based on where we are at in that moment. That applies to self-defense, it applies to training in class, and it applies to running a school or just teaching a class. It's equally applicable. I said it at the top, you can't have growth without change. It is logically impossible. We exist in a world that greatly values things because they've existed for a while. Our traditions, we prioritize, we elevate at times things that are older simply because they are older. That can be fine, but it doesn't always make things better. In fact, quite often, it does not. But change doesn't mean you have to do everything differently. I know plenty of schools who taught their same traditional, tried and true curriculum that they were passionate about over Zoom. And it worked. They conducted testings and other things over Zoom. Was it as good as being in the school? No. But were there advantages to it? Yeah. There's one school I know of in particular that had students that had gone off to college and moved away, and they came back in droves. They had temporarily dozens of old students come back, and it made everyone so happy. Because there are pros and cons to everything that we might do, every method that we might use of presenting our material. If you've been in front of a class, you know that you can present things in a lot of different ways, and depending on the mix of people you have in front of you, some of them work really well, some of them don't. So my hope as we look back on 2022 and we look at that you'll consider into the future, where are my methods maybe outdated? How might I consider being more modern in what I do? And if you say, well, Jeremy, it's important that everything we do be as traditional as possible. Do you wash your uniform in a washing machine? Or do you use rocks and a washboard? Do you bring it down to the creek? I'm going to guess not. And if that's true, then clearly we're allowed to do some things differently. We can adapt, we can grow, and we can be intentional about what those things are. We change what needs to be changed. We keep what should be kept. And yeah, that's incredibly subjective, and it should be. But as long as it's intentional, it's worthwhile. The need to adapt isn't over. Our difficult times are not gone. The world has always had difficult times, and we will continue to have difficult times. And if we're not willing to adapt to those times, then martial arts as we know it will die. Now, maybe that doesn't mean anything to you. Maybe you don't care that much, but I'm going to guess that's not the case. Because if you're watching a live video stream or even a rebroadcast, a later video stream or audio stream, if you're spending this time hearing my thoughts, I can't imagine that you don't care. So if you care, you must adapt. The way we teach now is not the same that we taught decades ago. If you talk to older folks who trained in the 50s and the 60s, you know that it was brutal training and that children were rarely accepted. Most of us started training as children. And those of us who didn't, very few of us would have trained the way that they trained back then. No gear, lots of bruises and blood and broken bones. Most of us have to go to work the next day. We've already made tremendous change. We can continue to make tremendous change, but it doesn't mean that the spirit of what we train has to change. As martial artists, I think we hold a unique position to support the world as things move. And I'm not necessarily going to say move forward, but as things change, we have tools that are not commonly held by people. If we take a look at the public school systems, and I've got some statistics for you in a moment. If you have children in public school, or you're aware of what's going on in public schools, you know that in most metrics, they're sliding. Our educational system in the United States and in most Western countries is not what it used to be. We're falling behind. And with those changes in our culture and in our schools, we see a lot of things around poor mental health. We see bullying, which as an industry, we do a really good job trying to address. And some schools do a wonderful job addressing it. And we need to continue that. The deficiencies that we see out of kids in school, if you were to make a list of all the things that kids need that they don't get from school, more movement, more engagement, more support, more challenges that they can meet, respect, honor. Martial arts is able to provide those to those kids. Is there something else that provides all of those things as well? I don't think so. As martial artists and schools, we have an opportunity to provide community at a time when, frankly, community is something that seems to be falling apart. People don't know their neighbors. Quite often, we don't like our neighbors. And it takes very little time on social media to recognize that people who know each other quite often don't want to talk to each other because of this issue or that issue. Now, I don't know about you, but I found that within my training partners at the various schools I've trained at, yeah, maybe we have differences. Maybe I don't even like people that are there, but I can respect them. I can treat them well. I can learn from them and with them. That's community. And it's something that exists in martial arts schools in a way that it does not exist in most places these days. And how about overall health? Mental health is something that we've talked about as a global society, especially over the last few years. The statistics vary from my research, but if you talk to someone who works crisis or suicide hotlines, domestic abuse hotlines, the anecdote is rather compelling. People have found that over the last few years, things have gotten quite dire. Again, martial arts may not provide all of the solutions, but it can certainly help. I know from my own personal experiences and a lot of the friends that I have who struggle with depression or anxiety, that a good training session is often a wonderful way to mitigate how they're feeling. So how do we grow and share those benefits? Well, one that I've been talking about for a long time, and I will continue to shout: daytime classes. If you have a full-time school and you don't offer classes during the day, at least once a week, I think you're missing an opportunity. Well, Jeremy, who's going to come during the day? Kids are in school, people are working. In 1999, in the United States, 1.7% of children under 18 were homeschooled. In 2022, that number grew to 5.5%. It was a little bit higher in 2021. And it's come down a little bit. But there is nothing in any of the research that I've read that suggests that number will correct. In fact, even prior to 2020, it was going up steadily. If you think about how many kids are in your area, if you think about the things that martial arts training provides, it's quite a good marriage of offering and need. I know a lot of schools that offer daytime classes for homeschool or non-traditionally schooled students, and they do very well. You have to start somewhere. Building community. Research says that we generally need between 3 and 5 good friends to be healthy. Well, recent data shows that a third of people report having fewer than 3 friends, and 12% of people claim they have no good friends. In 1990, it was only 3%. Once again, we see that there are some changes happening in society. Well, how many of you take a quick check mentally? How many of your best friends, or at least good friends, are martial artists? Most of the folks that I know in martial arts have a good portion of their social circle also in martial arts. It's something we have in common. If you meet someone and they also train, it becomes rather quick to develop, if not a friendship, at least a little bit of trust. You can talk to them. You have something in common. You understand that you have some shared values. And if you're someone who has no friends and you start training, well, unless you're a complete jerk, you just picked up a whole bunch of friends really quickly. They may not be lifelong friends. They may not become the maid of honor or the best man at your wedding. But they're people who, if you call them, will probably help you. If you ask them for something, they'll probably give it. Because that's just the sort of community that most martial arts schools cultivate. Some schools can and all should host events for students and the wider community. Fostering relationships with fundraisers and competitions, barbecues, community service. I know some schools that do community service. Some schools make it mandatory at certain ranks. I think that's wonderful. Not so much the mandatory part, but the recognition that it is important. Self-defense seminars. There's something that we as an industry have done for a very long time and do quite well, but it's something we can continue to do. A lot of schools fell out of these patterns over the last few years, but it's time to pick it back up. It's time to get out there and show the world that traditional martial artists are wonderful people who care about their communities. That sadly, what most of them see as martial arts being mixed martial arts via the UFC and other high-end promotions, that's not what most of us are about. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy watching strong competition. I don't like the storylines, and I suspect many of you don't as well. So many martial artists want more and they want better, but they refuse to do anything differently. There's this quote from Henry Ford that I really like that I think is appropriate. If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. There are a lot of kind of shorter, more colloquial versions of that, but that's the original one, if you didn't know. And maybe more importantly, he also said, there is no failure except failure to serve one's purpose. For a lot of us, martial arts is our purpose. And if that's the case for you, I want to challenge you. Be bold. Shout from the rooftops about how wonderful martial arts is. And if you have a school, shout how great it is. And if you don't think your school is worthy of shouting, then make it better. Make it worthy of shouting. We're often humble and quiet and reserved. I don't know if you've noticed, the world is not humble or quiet or reserved anymore. Doesn't mean we have to overcorrect and become boisterous, bragging. What are the opposites? Bragging, loud, and oppressive. There's a middle ground. We can share. We can talk. We can speak with conviction. I'm asking you to do nothing more than what I'm doing right now. This is not something I'm terribly comfortable doing, but it's important, so I do it. If your school is important to you, then you need to do these things. If you want people to train and derive the benefits of training, you need to do these things. Because if we don't change, the results don't change. If you want big results, you need big change. About 3% of the population in the United States trains in the martial arts. Did you know that's only about half of the global participation in martial arts? A huge percentage of that is children, but I bet there are very few children watching right now. I want you to stop looking at the martial artist or the martial arts school down the street as a problem. They're not your competition. They're not your enemy. Here's the proof. If I were to ask you, think of the biggest fast food restaurants, chains on the planet. Most of you very quickly would mention McDonald's, Burger King. Where do you see nearly every Burger King? Next to a McDonald's. Why? Why do you see nearly every clothing store in some sort of mall with other clothing stores? Because that density creates awareness and participation. The other schools aren't your enemies. They're allies that you refuse to work with. Rather than going after the students at the school down the street, go after the other 97% of the population. Why not? Why steal a student when you can more easily and with less fallout and less lack of integrity, you can bring somebody new in, somebody who's never trained before. Now, I love martial arts. I've been training since I was 4 years old, but I don't love every martial artist. Most of us are absolutely wonderful people, but some of us spend far too much time worried about what other people are doing. I think about this stuff a lot. If you know anything about me and what I do, you know that I think about this stuff and I talk about this stuff. It's not a secret if you know anything about me that I'm very much a live and let live person. And you can feel free to apply some labels to that. I'm not going to use them. If what somebody does doesn't harm me or others, I don't have a right to get involved. And I'm probably not even going to waste the energy caring about it. When I look at the martial arts world, I see people spending more time worried about what everyone else is doing than their own training. And Andrew's had it in the bottom corner for a few minutes now. Shut up and train. It's a very simple statement. And maybe it comes across a little harsh. And I don't think I'd ever say it to someone to their face. But it's a sentiment that most of us need to carry forward. If you catch yourself investing time and energy in what other people are training, people you don't even know, let that be a signal. Shut up and train. Take that time, take that energy, and invest it in yourself. Think of all the time that you've spent watching videos of people doing things that you don't think is appropriate. All the time you've spent commenting on videos, making yourself feel better about life and your training because you've disparaged someone else. Shut up and train. If you add all that time up, how much better a martial artist would you be? Are you aware that you're choosing to make those comments over making yourself a better martial artist? Do you really want to make that choice? Is that really who you want to be? A lot of this hate or criticism comes from differences. There are a tremendous number of differences between martial arts, between schools, styles, people, instructors. We're not all the same. I often see people commenting about what a black belt should be or shouldn't be. Why is your way the right way? It's not. Instead of looking at the differences and lamenting that disparity, how about celebrating it? Martial arts itself is rooted in pitting different strategies, different ideas against each other and seeing what works. In fact, for most of us, if we did not have other people to test ourselves against, we would not be nearly what we are. So when we have different ways of doing things, different schools teaching different styles in different ways, different rank structures, different priorities, that's a good thing. Because some people will resonate with what one school does, some will resonate with what another does. And wouldn't you rather have more people training? I see a lack of willingness to approach and remove individuals of poor character. Sometimes people will claim that they're doing this when really they're attacking what they train or how they train. Sadly, if you were to search karate or taekwondo or martial arts or kung fu or any of the terms that we might commonly use to describe the things that we do in, say, Google News, you're going to get back a really depressingly high percentage of news articles about an instructor who did something that we wish they had never done. If you spend time, if you dig into those articles, if you talk to some of the people involved, as I have, you find out that generally some people suspected. Quite often people knew. I bet, sadly, most of us who've been training a while have met at least one martial arts instructor who abused their power in some way. Some of us continued to support that person. When we say that martial arts makes us better people, and then we don't hold people who refuse to grow and instead cause harm, we're not living up to that standard. If you promote someone that you know is a terrible person, you're part of the problem. The school I grew up in was quite clear. You didn't earn a black belt if you weren't a good person. I had a conversation with someone a few years ago. Somebody had come to them. They trained in the same style. This person was an instructor. They had a school. And someone came and was looking to start training under them and gain rank. And as I was talking to this friend of mine, multiple times they said, well, I don't know that this is a good person. And ultimately, we got to the heart of it. And I said, okay, do you recognize that if you promote them, if your rank, whether it says your name on it or not, is around their waist, you have endorsed them as a human being? Do you want people to look to you and say, you think this is a good person? Now, again, different schools do it differently. Not every martial arts school has to say that quality of character is a necessary component of rank. But most of them claim that. So it has to be enforced. And it starts at the top with the instructors. Higher ranks don't always practice what they preach. Sometimes about health. And I'll be delicate here because it's a statement that I often catch flack for. And time training. Just because you are the head of an organization or a system or a school, that doesn't mean you stop training. Maybe your training changes. It doesn't mean that you are off the hook to represent the things that your school system, style, etc., claim are important. If you expect someone to be capable of something, say a low rank, if you expect them to embody certain values, that's a better way to say it, it should be even clearer at higher ranks. And the higher the rank, the clearer it should be. I'm not talking about technique. Many of our higher ranks are older and their bodies are not always capable of doing some of the things that they could do when they were younger. Not at all what I'm talking about. We can eat well regardless of our age and rank. We can treat people well regardless of our age and rank. Whatever those virtues are that your school espouses, some schools have them strongly codified. You have to practice what you preach. And if the person at the top is not practicing them, you can tell at the bottom. I remember one day, this was close to 10 years ago, I was at a competition. Somebody who I've gotten to know and now actually very much like and respect, but I didn't know him then. But at that competition, I watched a number of his students, had conversations with some of them. I didn't know any of them. His students did not do terribly well in the competition, but they were kind, they were respectful, they had grace. They treated everyone around them well, every single one. And so I went up and I found the instructor and I said, you have great students. You must be a good instructor. He said, how did you know? And he tried to shrug it off. I said, no, I have observed quite a few things today. But one of the things I've observed is that every single one of your students has been a good person. And I think to most of us, that is the heart of martial arts and what martial arts growth should showcase. Trolls. We have to stop feeding the trolls. Sadly, there are a good number of prominent martial arts social media accounts, different platforms, and their entire purpose is to provide material for people to hate on, so it works, the algorithms, and they get likes and they get comments and they get follows. That doesn't make the world better. It doesn't make anything better. Great. You have 100,000 or 500,000 followers. How does that make anything better? In fact, all it really does is it reinforces the stereotypical conversations that we have in the martial arts. That doesn't work. That's not real. It's the noise I make. It's the noise I make for trolls and for BS. There are people out there who have tremendous followings, but they don't contribute anything. How are you making the world better? Do you really want to be remembered for causing division and hate? It's not even entertainment. It's hijacking a primal element of our consciousness to pay attention to things that are scary and negative. Because when our brains developed, there were wolves and bears and things trying to kill us. Stop playing on that part of humanity. You're not making things better. If your content does not add to the lives of others, you're a drain on our community. Bringing it back, shut up and train. We could have titled this that. State of the Martial Arts, shut up and train. And so now I'm going to submit to you, all of you who are watching, a working draft on my thoughts on a sort of Bill of Rights of the martial arts. And I've called it 6 Martial Artists' Freedoms. And I invite you to review, expand, critique. Not right now, but I'm a very easy person to find. You're welcome to email or catch me on social media. If you have feedback, constructive feedback, I don't tolerate hate anymore. If you're hateful, you're automatically blocked. But I'm not developing this in a vacuum. I got feedback from a lot of people, and I would like more feedback. So the first one, every martial artist has the freedom to train what they want, how they want, when they want, where they want, with and from whom they want, and why they want. There are plenty of people out there who will point at that and say, well, you know, Jeremy, that person didn't earn their rank from a recognized lineage, and this person over here is too gentle on their students, and that person over there is too hard on their students. These are all subjective criticisms. Why do you get to determine what, where, when, why, how someone trains? Why are you the authority? Guess what? You're not. You are welcome to your own opinion, but you have no right to determine what someone else is doing with their training. Number 2, the freedom to remain private about who, what, where, when, why, and how they train, as well as their rank, their school, their instructor, lineage, and training history. No one has to share what they know with you. They don't have to confirm to you their certificates or their rank or anything. Now, if they make a claim, sure. But there are plenty of people out there who will say, I don't like what you're doing. I demand you present your rank certificates. No. No one has to provide that to you. They have the freedom to keep things private. Hard stop. Number 3, the freedom to determine what martial arts is to them and to embody that for themselves. We don't all define martial arts in the exact same way. That's okay. You are welcome to your definition. I have a very strong opinion about my definition. Not everyone agrees with it. That's fine. I'm quite happy having spirited debates about terms and language. But at the end of the day, it is subjective. And it doesn't hurt anyone. If I decide that the thing I do is martial arts and you decide that it isn't, well, guess what? I'm going to keep doing it because it doesn't impact you. It doesn't matter. Shut up and train. Number 4, the freedom to become better as martial artists and as people. I believe wholeheartedly that martial arts training makes us a better version of ourselves. And I don't think I've ever met a martial artist who disagrees with that. In fact, if you talk to most parents, why did they bring their kid to martial arts training? Well, I want them to learn this, that, or the other. How did they know, even if they haven't trained, that they would gain those benefits? Because the world knows that martial arts makes us better people. And everyone has the right, they have the freedom to become better in and out of training, the freedom to gain their skills through their training, and the freedom to be a better version of who they are, however they choose to define that. Number 5, the freedom to take your martial arts training back into your life in the way that you feel is best, including self-defense and protection of others. This is one that probably will get the least objection. Most of us train, at least in some part, because we want to be able to protect ourselves and those we love. And most of us also want to take the things that we learn, discipline and respect, etc., back into our lives. A lot of people start training and they become more effective at work. Great. Do that. Take those lessons and bring them back out into the world and model your better version of yourself for everyone to see. And when they ask, hey, why are you doing so much better? Tell them it's from your training. And number 6, the freedom to compete in a mutually agreed upon fashion. Again, not one that I suspect will have much objection, but it's an important element. If I want to attend a forms competition and the other people at the forms competition are there by choice, great. If you think forms competition dilutes forms training or is dumb or whatever, so what? It doesn't have any impact on the people doing it. By the same token, there are plenty of people who say various combat rule sets are irrelevant or stupid or pointless. But what if they have fun doing it? Martial arts isn't necessarily to become the most BA fighter in the world. I refer you back to, which number was it? 1, 2. Well, it's number 1, and it's number 3, and it's 4 and 5 and 6 now, right? Just because you think doing something with your training is wasteful doesn't mean somebody else doesn't have benefited from it, because we all train for different reasons. My why and your why are not the same. Great. Now, I want you to notice that none of the things that I just said there tell people what to do. These are freedoms, not requirements. While I do believe it's arrogant to dismiss someone else's training, nothing I'm saying here prohibits you from doing that. I'm simply drawing a line at your dismissal, preventing someone from taking action they choose to take. It's kind of hard to do that in the modern era. But if you're spending all of your time yelling at someone or trying to suppress them from attending a certain school, and you know what? I've actually had people who I've witnessed this, and I've been on the other end of this, almost obsessed with separating me from someone I was training with. It's very odd. There's a line there. There's a hard line there. It's not okay. If you believe someone else's training is a waste of time, go for it. Think that. I really don't care. But you have no right to stop them. If you don't want to train with someone, you don't have to. If you don't want to teach someone, you don't have to. Freedom of choice does not mean freedom of consequence. However, so that means you have to choose your actions. There's a saying that's been kicked around on social media over the last few years that the problem with social media is that it's made people very comfortable saying terrible things without fear of being punched in the mouth. Now, while I'm far from an advocate for violence, there is an element of truth there. We spend a lot of time, or some of us sadly spend a lot of time critiquing, hating, throwing shade, pick your phrase. And there aren't consequences. Well, if you know about the quote unquote dojo wars era of martial arts in the United States, you know that there used to be consequences. If a school made, even one person made disparaging comments about a school on the other side of town, there might be an impromptu sparring night. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go back to those times. I don't think that was a good thing. But if you speak out, there may be consequences. And you need to be prepared for those. It's my hope that the freedoms that I've laid out here, whether it's in this exact form or more likely some modified version, can be something that we as a martial arts industry grow to embody everywhere, in every school, in every student, and in every instructor. Not because I came up with them. I really couldn't care less. If somebody comes up with a better version of this, by all means, I will be 100% behind it. But I think we do need some manner of code. If you know the term Budo, the way, right? Code. There's a code of conduct in there. And we've forgotten that. For a lot of us, we treat martial arts as something that we do a few hours a week and then we go off to the rest of our lives. But if we really dig in, you're a martial artist 24/7. The way you approach the world, the way you treat people. We need to remember that. I do believe wholeheartedly, and I've said this already, probably more than once, martial arts training makes us better versions of ourselves. And that's why I do what I do, why we do what we do. Even 6 months of martial arts can have lifelong and life-changing impact in ways that other sports and hobbies just don't. How many of you that have schools have had a parent bring a child in and say, you know, I did martial arts for a few months when I was a kid and it was really good for me. And I want my child to have that same opportunity, that same experience. I've never heard anyone say, you know, I did 6 months of basketball when I was a kid and it changed my life. But I've heard it plenty of times about karate and taekwondo and kung fu and insert your martial art of choice here. And because I always try to end on a positive and a hopeful note, the biggest things that we do well in the martial arts, we give people a platform, dare I say, the best platform for personal growth. Every single, I wish I could say that, almost every single person that I know that has been through martial arts training for, you know, a few years is a better version of themselves. And that's a good thing. We need to recognize that we have that platform, that having people in class for a few days could be the difference between, for some of them, life or death. Not necessarily violent life or death, but there are other ways that occurs. We need to recognize the value of what we have and treat it in the sacred way that it deserves. We do a wonderful job of giving people the opportunity to get healthier and to make friends and to learn new skills. And the last one that I think we absolutely knock out of the park, we are broadly accepting of people regardless of their demographics, politics, height, weight, ethnicity, country of origin. I see martial arts schools that have the most eclectic mix of people, and I love it. And it deserves celebration, and we need to continue doing it. When we're all training together, we're just training. We're all martial artists. Everything else is secondary. If I train with you, if we're sweating, we're working hard, we're learning, we're having a good time, how we view the world outside of that is irrelevant. And that's wonderful. And I hope that we can remember that when we stop training, that there are other things that are more important than insert your divisive issue du jour here. Let's expand on these positive things. Let's come together. Let's support each other. Let's share what we love and make a true and lasting impact on the world. The world deserves what we have. And as martial artists, it is our responsibility to share this gift with the world. I'm going to read that Henry Ford quote again. Where is it? Oh, that was way up here. There is no failure except failure to serve one's purpose. Embody that. I appreciate you watching or listening to this, and I hope that what we put together today was of value to you. I may or may not respond. I see there are a lot of comments. I may or may not respond to some of them. So let me start by saying thank you, and then I'm going to take a look, and we'll go from there. I'm seeing a lot of people on board. I like what Jared says here. Martial artists, gentlemen barbarians. Well said. This is Victor. I think it's imperative for martial arts schools to become pillars in our communities. Absolutely. Jeff says, I agree. Training is a wonderful mental health salve. Yes. Ray says, adapt and overcome. That's the way of true martial artists. Yeah. And I'm going to end here with another comment from Victor. Only thing to do is be better tomorrow than we were today and keep moving forward. Exactly. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you more than you might know. It is my hope that if this conversation, this broadcast made you think, that you will continue to think, and that maybe you'll take some of those thoughts to others. The growth that I think so many of us are committed to can't happen with just the people watching or listening. It's going to take a lot of us. You're part of it. Martial arts has likely treated you very well. It's time to treat martial arts well. Take care and have a good night.